Thank you all for being here, and I'm super excited to be here and for the opportunity. Looking at a panel like this is unheard of at Cannes Lions. So I do feel like there is a moment of like history and just showcasing some of the work that can be done and can be done well and should be done more, because you have plenty of leadership, plenty of people who do a lot of things behind the scenes to make this business right. So this panel is about the game changers, so women's leadership across sports and the spectrum. I'm going to go ahead and move pretty quickly here, but we're going to talk about fandom, innovation, the next generation, and what these women really value and what's important to them. So as you guys speak, remind our audience who you are, but let's talk about game changers. What does game changer mean to you in your organization? How do you embody that? Down the line.
Down the line.
Down the line.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Keisha Taylor Starr, and I'm the general manager of Scripps Networks and also the chief marketing officer for the Scripps enterprise. And when I think about changing the game, for us, I think it means having women in leadership roles showing up at the table. And I think when we show up at the table, our presence alone exacts change, and it makes people lean forward. And we need that right now, because we need to make sure that we are elevating women's sports, and we are doing it to elevate one another, our communities, and making sure that athleticism is seen equally across the board. And that's one of the things we've really been focused on at Scripps. Athleticism is the baseline, and men and women both have it, and it's really important for us that we're able to showcase it.
Amazing. So, good afternoon. My name is Gina Scott, and I am with the NFL Players Association. I am the Vice President of Partner Services, where I focus on our off-the-field revenue. So my job is to make as much money for 2,500 active players off the field via commercial endorsements, NFL sponsors, partnerships, brand awareness, you name it. And, I love the term game changer, right? Because it can personify a person, it can personify a movement. But I think relative to this discussion, a game changer to me means someone that's creating a legacy. So many times as women in this industry, you don't see very many of us in the industry, in the rooms, making the decisions at the table. So to me, when I think about a game changer, it's how do we get into spaces that are not normally open and that don't normally stay open to us. And when we do have an opportunity to get into those spaces, how are we creating and making and creating a lasting legacy?
And again, Danita Johnson, President of Business Operations with DC United, and really mine, very similar. This is about legacy. And I think, being a game changer and doing things, it's not just about one action, it's about multiple actions over time that lead to creating change. And when we focus on that, whether it is adding where we're almost 50% women in our front office, where we are more diverse than almost any MLS team from a front office perspective, creating those opportunities. And not only is it the result that comes, it's the systems in which we change and apply from a leadership perspective in business that help to create that. So what do our hiring practices look like? What are we doing with our youth as they come through our internship programs and our outlets that we're bringing in? I'm going to say it, and I hope I say it right, CCDC. Did I say it correctly, the acronym? Okay, perfect. Thank you. I want to make sure I had that right. Programs such as that, like our Young Lions that we're bringing up into this and through the different programming, all matter. And I think that is what we do to help change the game, because we ourselves are just like the advocates. We're the ones that get to help open those doors to help our young people actually see the difference.
I love that. I love these responses from elevation, legacy, being someone who has been a recipient. Thank you, Verizon Wireless, for sponsoring my scholarships in college through the Hispanic College Fund. I mean, these are the types of decisions being made behind the doors. And I know that we have an intern here right now who's also the next generation. So, the culture of sports is really evolving. And, innovation and curation and all of that is just a natural part of what we do. Ryan Reynolds yesterday said, I call it fast-vertising, when you can actually like when you actually put your brand in the moment, because sports moves at the speed of light. So to that note, what are the shifts that you're seeing that are important to you? Because we all see a lot of things, Caitlin Clark throwing 3 threes, and but how how is that kind of coming to fruition, but also where you see women taking a part in this as well? So sports culture, moving fast, and women taking part.
You know, I think for us, we did a lot of white space exploration before we got into women's sports. And I think that's what every business does. We're trying to find the opportunities, and we wanted to be in a place where we could grow along with a league. We didn't want to be in a place that was already saturated. And when we started to look at the landscape, we realized women's sports was part of that and a really critical part of it. And then when I started to meet with the commissioners and the different women who were in leadership positions in these organizations, I thought this is exactly what we need. We already cater to an audience that is largely female. We need to make sure that we're engaging a much broader audience. And of course, we want to bring the men along too, but for us, what we've really seen is now an investment in women's sports. And it's been phenomenal to see, but we're really still at the 50-yard line. There are still brands that are hesitant to engage in women's sports. There are still advertisers and sponsors who need to get on board. And I am ready, as I think these ladies are too. Listen, I think we're ready. We're there. And so those are the trends that we're starting to see. What I'd like to see is more of that, because these women have the same athleticism as their male counterparts. And we see it when we show up for games. People talk about the WNBA, and a lot of the reasons why people like to watch it is because that's the game played at its purest. I think there's really the fundamentals. You see that. It's not the showboating, and I think people enjoy sport, they enjoy the game, and they've been showing up in amazing numbers, and we're really thankful for that.
Definitely.
I'll piggyback on that, and I'll say, I think one of the trends, women, they're finally starting to catch up with their marketing power. You know, I focus on football all day long, and I always like to say we were NIL before it got to be a big thing. And I think I had the fortunate opportunity a couple of years ago, probably about 7 or so years ago, to actually sit down and work with the WNBPA and the U.S. Women's National Team and consult with them on how to create a group licensing program for their players and their athletes, where the women were finally going to start getting paid not only for their marketing and brand value, but actually creating equity to make sure it wasn't a fleeting thing. You know, in football, we have one of the most profitable group licensing programs where our players get paid royalties for their rights. What we found is that the women were not getting paid nearly as much for their marketing rights. You know, like you said, the sponsors weren't there.
Yeah.
The women's soccer EA game was the fastest growing game, and the women were not on the cover, and they were not getting their equal share. So we sat down, we consulted with both organizations, and I think we're finally starting to see sponsors directly go to those leagues without it being an add-on. We're finally starting to see the women and the female athletes rise up and get their due share when it comes to endorsements and that brand awareness. So it needs to continue. As we said, we are not done yet, but I think just building a solid framework, and as I said, the key is to create equity so it's not fleeting, it becomes the norm and a permanent thing.
Only thing, I think these two ladies covered most of it there. I would just say, you know, it's continued investment, and I know we talk about it, but you got to bet big to win big.
Absolutely.
Right? And so what happens a lot for our businesses is they are so traditional in their ways, and what you all do, you found the white space, right? And you did a lot of that to go and find something new. The biggest businesses in the world are the most successful because they bet big. And so if you bet big on women, you have an opportunity to make it more successful. And so there's formulas that are typically followed whenever you build a business. And some of those formulas may, in our format as women, be done in a different way outside of the tradition. And that's what we have to continue to teach and educate, which is why the other format of this is why you need women in leadership. Right? Because we understand who we are, we understand the perspective. So having women in sports business with these different perspectives becomes really important. So what do I see as a trend? More women in leadership in sport. I think more women crossing sector. Being here at Cannes Lion, there's so many amazing women across different diasporas, different backgrounds that I could easily see moving into the sporting side with teams and leagues. And they probably just never even thought about that piece. So I think the creativity to actually come to the other side, to understand the advocacy they could do for women in sports. I run a men's team. But at the same time, the creation of us doing programs that create access for young girls through our funding and what we do, we have an ability to do, right? So that's what matters. We have to be there. And I think what I want to do and see as a new trend is more women from outside of sports coming into sport and starting to help build with us.
Wow, you found the right person. My consultancy helps brands, advertisers, and technology solution providers place their investment. And absolutely, 100%, that perspective is so critical. Like, it's diversity and perspective, it's inclusivity and understanding that there are gaps in the system. There are gaps in how we're servicing people, and that could even be at this event right now. So thank you. That's so beautiful. So, in this business, we are in the business of revenue or sustaining the business and seeing longevity. So as we think about revenue, representation, and risk-taking, or not, or valuable investment, change-making isn't just storytelling, it's in the business model. Can you help share how you personally have driven something new in the business that increases representation through your role and what that means for you?
I mean, for us, it's really the inclusion of women's sports in our lineup. When I joined Scripps 3 years ago, and ION is our biggest network, and we were a network that really focused on acquired procedurals. So if you love Law and Order SVU, come check us out, because we have it on all day. And that is what people knew us for, and that's great because you're known for something, but we also knew we couldn't just be known for that. And so my biggest success, I think, is really onboarding and, more specifically, giving a franchise night to 2 leagues. The WNBA and the NWSL. Friday night, WNBA, Saturday, NWSL, and making sure that we bet big. Because Danita's right. Scare money don't make money.
That's right.
That's what I've been told. So we have to be really thoughtful about where we place our bets. But I am so glad we got in on it so early, before there was a groundswell. We knew that there was greatness in both games, but now the groundswell is coming, and we were able to be on the front end of that. And I'm really proud of the work that we've done to give these 2 leagues franchise nights. The men should not be the only ones who have something that's Thursday night or Sunday night. No, we have it too, and I'm really proud that we were able to do that.
Good job. Can I get a high five? You go, girl.
So as you said, revenue is important. For the NFL Players Association, our for-profit side, we are a $400 million business a year. So one of the things that I think that we've done, we can't put women on the field in pads and helmets, but we can change and put more women in the front office, as we've kind of touched on today. And 6 years ago, we were renegotiating our commercial collective bargaining agreement, which is where we trade all of our rights, that's anchored with an annual rights fee. I am proud to say that I renegotiated the biggest commercial agreement for the players in our 10-year history, and we went into that deal making $10 million more on the front end. What I was able to do is I started to build my term, because we all know that revenue talks. The more money you bring in, the bigger voice you can have. And so as I started building my team to get forward to the next 10 years, I was very purposeful about bringing more women on my team. In our business, men tend to sit in the revenue, in the money seat, and you don't see very many women being out front leading the sales. Most of the time, women are on the service side as nurturers. So I've been very purposeful and very intentional about bringing more women onto this side of the business and more visible positions to directly handle the revenue and teach them how to talk in dollar signs as well.
Wow, there you go.
Gina, I love that, because you were so right. We are not there. We're not on the revenue generation side of the business.
Yep.
Or the operations side of the business.
It's rare. But I think there's a beauty in even being on the service side of the business. I actually have Chanel Mosley, who leads our foundation and director of our community relations programs at DC United. And one of the things I'm really proud of is that show that community can also drive revenue. And Chanel's worked tirelessly on these programs, from our Women United program. We do a program with the Twinning Project, where we go into the prisons and teach soccer and education as they get ready to rehabilitate out, like actually in the prisons. They go in and teach. I think we have graduation coming up when we get back to DC. Not only do they do that for men, but they also do it for women. We work with House of Ruth, and we go in and do programming and education, help them. We've done some revitalization with our partners. And why I say that is because we know with partners comes dollars, right? So with Sherwin-Williams, we've gone in and actually revamped some of the space. We've actually done some stuff where we've actually ended up hiring some of these women part-time on our staff and some of our like stadium operation roles. So I say that because community has an opportunity to drive revenue, because almost every single one of our partners, part of their partnership has community in it, right? And so it becomes a revenue generator for us, and I've always believed in that. I've grown up in this. I know where our stadium sits in communities. They come from, most stadiums are sitting in communities that want impoverished or underserved. They're food deserts typically, and we have to serve back. So if we can take the income dollars that we're putting together and raising from our overall business, from sponsors, and also feed that back into community, but also build programs that we can sell to partners, and that's what we've been able to do. It's been absolutely phenomenal. It's something that just gives a lot of pride and credibility to the work that we get to do every day.
Incredible. Oh, I felt that one. I felt that. Okay, so last closing question. We have some people here. I know we always have influencers watching, so any call to action that you would give if you're like, please do this right now, or this is how you can help me?
I would say talk about it. And if you don't know about it, like, get into it. Go to a game, buy a ticket. Like, first off, you all know how to deep dive into anything. Like, the things I have learned from influencers that I never knew about life, thank you. But, like, just become part of the conversation, right? And you all know that if you are driving conversation, it can drive engagement. Your voices matter. You're part of this table too, and don't forget that. And if you don't know, reach out to us. I'll tell sports all day, right? So like, if it's something you're trying to figure out and learn about, we're happy to be a resource for you all to figure out how you can incorporate it into your platforms and your world.
I would say don't be afraid to start a new conversation. You know, I love how you said, ask us, join the conversation. But a lot of times, how many times do you see we talk about the same things over and over again, right? And I love the fact that Sharon has created this, right, to bring a different voice, a different conversation off the crust set, right? So ask us, start a different conversation. If there's a hot topic out there and no one's talking about it, come to us, start the conversation with us, and we will give you great feedback and put it out there. I think one of the great things about working in sports is that players have really taken ownership and they put their voice out there, right? Pull the curtain back. Like, there are some amazing women that work in the field of sports that can be thought leaders on so many new and innovative topics as well.
Yeah. I would say invest in your brands behind the camera. So it's great when you are seen in front of the camera and you are creating content, and that's wonderful. But you have 4 on this stage who understand how business works, who can be additive to your career growth. And if you are not leveraging those relationships and having those conversations behind the scenes as you build the brand, I think you're missing out on a real opportunity. So really focus on your brand and building it.
Cool, and I'll add to this one. I was just asked to be an associate producer on a new docuseries coming out, Renaissance in Paris, that talks about how 2 American investors are rebuilding the Metropolitans team. But I felt that I also had a place, you know, as a woman, as a producer and a visionary to forge. And like, you know, there are things going on behind the scenes where you can be an advocate regardless of content, genre, roles that seem outside of scope. So I was
Mollie?
very grateful for the opportunity, World Artists United. So thank you. Wow, I never saw that in my lifetime. But we are at time. Thank you all for joining. And guys, amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.